Start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Pre-summit preparations kick into high gear. Meeting in the host city of Hanoi, North Korean and US officials hold talks for more than 4 hours as their leaders prepare to meet for the second time next week. President Moon Jae-in and the Prime Minister of India are set for summit talks in Seoul. South Korea is keen to build on its already strong relationship with one of the fastest up-and-coming economies in the world. Plus, as the two sides continue talks in Washington, optimism is growing that the US and China might be able to reach a deal by the early March deadline set by President Trump. Well, this time next week, it will all be over, but we're going to start with our pre-summit build-up. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is insisting there will be no compromise on the goal of North Korea's complete denuclearization ahead of next week's summit in Hanoi. In an interview with US network NBC on Thursday, Pompeo said the regime's complete denuclearization remains the main objective as the two countries head into next week's summit. Pompeo refused to say what the US might offer as concessions, reaffirming that sanctions will not be lifted unless the North abandons its nukes. In a separate interview with Fox Business Network, Pompeo said he hopes to see North Korea's denuclearization materialize in the same unexpected way the Berlin Wall fell in the late 1980s. And North Korea and the US held their first follow-up talks in Hanoi on Thursday as the envoys of the two sides thrashed out the agenda for next week's highly anticipated summit in the Vietnamese capital. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
It was at a little past 1 p.m. local time on Thursday that North Korea's special representative for U.S. Affairs of the State Affairs Commission, Kim Hyuk-chul, was seen leaving the state guest house in Hanoi alongside Kim Sung-hae, head of the North's Unification Strategy Office at the United Front Department. Shortly afterwards, Kim arrived at the hotel where his American counterpart Stephen Biegun is staying for their first face-to-face discussions in 2 weeks. The negotiations lasted roughly 4.5 hours, during which Kim Sung-hae was seen leaving for the state guest house after 2 hours before returning right away. It's expected the two sides discussed the summit agenda and may have also discussed the contents of the Hanoi Declaration set to be unveiled after next week's summit. Thursday's talks were a follow-up to their meeting in Pyongyang earlier this month, when Kim and Biegun reportedly discussed the shutdown of North Korea's Yongin nuclear complex and Washington's corresponding measures. Those measures are set to include the establishment of a joint liaison office, a declaration to end to the Korean War, and the easing of sanctions on the regime. A senior U.S. official on Thursday stressed that the U.S. will eventually need a full inventory of North Korea's nuclear arsenal well before the end of the denuclearization process, adding that for now, the immediate priority is to freeze all of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and missile programs. With less than a week until the second Pyongyang-Washington summit, the two sides will have to get down to the most detailed aspects of the agenda to ensure the summit is a success. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So, with the second summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump just around the corner now, Kan Hyung-woo takes a look at who is going to be supporting both those leaders while they're in Hanoi.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump will surely be the faces of the upcoming Hanoi summit, grabbing all the limelight. But it's their respective support teams that have led and will continue to hold working-level talks in the run-up to the summit. Similar to the Singapore summit last June, Vice Chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea Kim Hyuk-chul and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will serve as the top advisors for Kim Jong-un and President Trump, respectively. North Korea's Minister of Foreign Affairs Lee Yong-ho and U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton will also again play a key role at the Hanoi summit. But in regards to pre-summit negotiations, there have been personnel changes on both sides. North Korea's former ambassador to Spain, Kim Hyok-chol, has replaced the regime's vice foreign minister, Choi Sun-hee. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, has also taken over the role served by the U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, Sung Kim, in the run-up to the first summit. Photos suggest Kim Hyok-chol and Biegun are the negotiation channels that directly report to their respective leaders. Both Kim and Biegun have met each other's leaders face-to-face, indicating their messages have been clearly exchanged and understood. With no experience in leading North Korea-U.S. negotiations, the pair are under pressure to break out of the unfruitful patterns seen over the past decades. The world will have to wait to see what kind of agreement comes out of the Hanoi summit, but the outcome could determine whether the pairing of Kim Hyok-chol and Stephen Biegun will still be in place if President Trump and Kim Jong-un meet for a third time in the future. Kanyungu, Arirang News.
Now, on June 12, 2018, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump agreed in Singapore to 4 points aimed at improving their historically strained bilateral relationship. Given that the Hanoi summit is happening next week, we thought we'd take a look at how much of the deal, known as the Sentosa Agreement, has been carried out over the past 9 months. EG1 reports.
The Sentosa Agreement consists of 4 pillars, from establishing new North Korea-U.S. relations to Pyongyang returning the remains of U.S. soldiers from the Korean War. Last July, the North returned 55 sets of remains of U.S. soldiers killed in the Korean War. Both Seoul and Washington also ceased or downsized the number of annual joint military exercises. The U.S. also announced a review of its North Korea policy in order to send humanitarian aid to the regime. But there were no major developments on building their new future and denuclearizing the peninsula. The North had dismantled the Punggye nuclear test site and repatriated 3 detained Korean Americans, but these events took place prior to the Singapore summit in June. The problem is, going forward, each side feels they'd be giving too much, such as the North fully disclosing its nuclear program and shipping out fissile materials, and the U.S. signing a peace treaty or backing off sanctions.
They both urged the other side to take the steps first. The U.S. called for North Korea's concrete denuclearization, while Pyongyang demanded Washington's trust-building measures. With neither side budging, there wasn't much progress.
With the second Kim-Trump summit just a few days away, the experts said it is vital to reach an agreement on denuclearization in negotiations, as well as set a system.
Even if the two actually improve their bilateral ties, they wouldn't be stable as there are no foundations. They need to institutionalize their promises through ways like setting up a liaison office. Keeping a timeline would also be necessary to continuously push through their agendas and avoid groundless criticism.
With various reports already saying that setting up a liaison office and the returning of war remains are going to be topics in the agenda at the summit, there are hopes that Hanoi will pave the way for more concrete progress in achieving not only their individual and mutual goals, but also regional peace and stability. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, President Moon Jae-in and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold a bilateral summit in Seoul in the coming hours, followed by an MoU signing ceremony and a state lunch. The Blue House says the two leaders are expected to discuss ways to expand practical cooperation in areas such as infrastructure, science and technology, and the defense industry. They will also likely reaffirm India's full support for the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. President Moon and Modi attended an unveiling ceremony of a bust of that man there, Mahatma Gandhi, at a South Korean university on Thursday in light of what would have been Gandhi's 150th birthday. President Moon later hosted a private dinner in honor of Modi, the first world leader to make a state visit to South Korea since the turn of the year. And as a follow-up to that, a South Korea-India business symposium was held in Seoul on Thursday. Participants from both sides, including India's Prime Minister, vowed to enhance bilateral economic cooperation between Seoul and New Delhi. Kim Hae-sung went to check it out and filed this report.
Around 400 business leaders and government officials from Korea and India gathered at a business forum on Thursday to strengthen bilateral economic ties.
Korea was and still remains a role model of economic growth for me. Friends, India today, a country of 1.25 billion people, is going through a great transition, realizing the Indian dream. We seek like-minded partners.
Like Korea in the past, Prime Minister Modi said India is also undergoing an economic transformation, moving from agriculture-dominated economy to one led by manufacturing and technology, becoming the world's sixth largest economy with an annual growth rate of 7%. Given India's huge domestic market and improving infrastructure, companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor have not just exported goods to India, but have built factories in the country in recent years. According to the Korea Customs Service, bilateral trade hit $21.5 billion in 2018, with Korea exporting $15.6 billion in 2018, up near 37% from $10 billion in 2010. At the forum, government officials from the two countries also said they hope to move beyond manufacturing and boost cooperation in high-tech industries and startup innovation.
India has invested heavily in infrastructure and 700,000 engineers are produced every year. Korea also has talented young people and technological know-how. It will be a win-win situation to create a startup ecosystem together.
A Korea-India Startup Hub homepage was launched at the forum to share more information and provide more networking opportunities between the two countries. Participants at the forum also emphasized the need to amend the two countries' bilateral Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, which went into effect in 2010, to make more items duty-free and to boost bilateral trade and investment. Negotiations on a revision have been underway since 2016. 김혜성, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, could an end finally be in sight? The US and China have resumed high-level trade talks aimed at easing a trade standoff that has cast a deep shadow over the global economy. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our No Adam. So Adam, walk us through the latest.
Well, Mark, there are reports that both sides are drawing up multiple MoUs that would form the basis of a final trade deal, though we have to wait until Friday before any official announcement is made. The latest reports suggest the two countries are beginning to make some progress towards ending their near 7-month trade war. Previous negotiations have all ended without an agreement, as Beijing resists most of the Trump administration's demands, but as a March deadline on fresh tariffs loom, both sides seem to be picking up steam now. US media are reporting that negotiators are working on 6 MoUs that would cover areas including agriculture, non-tariff barriers, services, technology transfer, and intellectual property. This would be just a broad outline, however, of what could make up a deal, but any major agreement will not likely come out after this week's talks. China's Commerce Ministry has also declined to comment specifically on the MoUs. US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Chinese Vice Premier Liu He are also yet to give any details of their first day of negotiations. Pope Francis has opened a historic summit at the Vatican to address the Catholic Church's child sex abuse scandal. The pontiff put forward a 21-point plan for combating the issue, emphasizing the need for concrete action.
The holy people of God are watching us and wait not just for simple and expected conviction, but concrete and efficient measures.
However, his proposals were dismissed by victims as inadequate, and also they called it a recycling of procedures that already exist. The 4-day meeting, which kicked off on Thursday, is being attended by victims from 5 continents, as well as nearly 200 bishops, cardinals, and heads of religious orders. A 5.8 magnitude earthquake has rocked the Japanese island of Hokkaido, but there were no immediate reports of serious damage or injuries. Japan's meteorological agency said the tremor struck Thursday night local time in the town of Atsuma at a depth of 33 kilometers. There was also no fear of a tsunami and no abnormalities were detected at nuclear plants in the region. Atsuma was hit by deadly landslides triggered by a 6.7 quake last September, which claimed more than 40 lives.
A big Friday thank you, as always, to our Noam there for the world news. Now, data from South Korea's central bank suggest that consumer prices will be lower in the months to come thanks to lower producer prices. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, producer prices fell in January by 0.2% from the month before, the fourth monthly decline in a row. The BOK attributed the drop to lower prices for petroleum and coal products. Oil prices had been falling too since November, but rebounded slightly last month. The prices of agricultural goods and services both inched up last month as well. The U.S. Commerce Department has issued its final decision over anti-dumping and countervailing duties of large diameter welded pipe imports from 4 countries, including South Korea. Imports of large diameter line pipe from South Korea were assigned a final dumping margin of 7 to 22.4%. That's down from a preliminary rate of 15 to 22% that was set in 2018. 3 other countries, Canada, Greece and Turkey, are also assigned different final duty rates from 2018. If the US-based International Trade Commission affirms that US industries have been damaged by the imports of these products, tariffs will be placed on the goods for the next 5 years. South Korea's finance chief has unveiled new ways to expand the government's so-called win-win type local job project. This follows the success of such a model used in the southwestern city of Gwangju. Hong Yu reports.
Korea will look for 2 to 3 more regions to apply its win-win type local jobs model, which has already been implemented in Gwangju. Also known as the Gwangju Job Project, it comes on the heels of Hyundai Motor's agreement with the city of Gwangju back in January to set up a joint venture with the city and build a car manufacturing facility. Manufacturing and service industries located outside the Seoul metropolitan area can be eligible for this project regardless of their size. The plan is to create customized jobs by inducing mutual cooperation among local economic players away from the central government-led employment policy. The local and central governments will provide various incentives such as subsidies and tax benefits to participating firms. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said the win-win type local job project will be a new breakthrough to Korea's economy. Experts and local government officials will deliberate and evaluate new regions where the model could be implemented. A detailed manual regarding this new model will be released around early March. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
SK Hynix, the world's second biggest memory chip maker, plans to invest almost $107 billion to build 4 semiconductor manufacturing plants in the city of Yongin, Gyeonggi-do province, after the year 2022. The announcement comes after a special purpose company in South Korea, established to create semiconductor cluster sites, submitted a letter of investment intent to Yongin city government to build a site in the area. Although the final decision needs government approval, SK Hynix says if Yongin is confirmed as a cluster site, it will build 4 factories there after 2022. Analysts say the move is to maintain the South Korean chip giant's competitiveness in the field amid growing competition from Chinese companies. Income polarization, the amount of money among the haves and the have-nots in South Korea. It has worsened sharply during the 3 months leading up to last December. Experts say this is mainly down to the dire employment conditions facing a great many people here in the country. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Income disparity continues to grow in the nation. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Thursday, nominal income among households in the bottom 20% income bracket is found to have sharply decreased by nearly 18% compared to the same period the previous year, to record $11,000 during the fourth quarter of last year. That's far less than the national monthly average of nearly $41,000. Meanwhile, monthly income among households in the top 20% income bracket rose by more than 10% on year to record nearly $83,000 in the fourth quarter of last year. Real income, which takes into account inflation rates as a whole, rose for the fifth consecutive quarter in Q4 last year by nearly 2% compared to that of Q4 of 2017. The gap in disposable income also widened during the fourth quarter of last year. Disposable income among the bottom 20% income bracket dropped by more than 8% on year to around $7,300, while that of the top 20% income bracket soared by more than 9% on year to record $40,000.
The worsened job situation last year, particularly among temporary employees, is seen as the main reason for the widening disparity in income.
The official also attributed the sharp income drop among the bottom 20% income bracket to a base effect during the fourth quarter of 2017, when the government's $3.7 billion supplementary budget on job creation took effect. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's a real shame that we have to talk about this so often these days, but South Korea is once again being plagued by fine dust. Several cities and provinces are once again under emergency measures on this Friday in a bid to help get rid of, or at least lower, the pollution levels. It currently affects Seoul, the surrounding province of Gyeonggi-do, as well as the city of Incheon, also the provinces of Jeollabuk-do, Gangwon-do, Gyeongsang-buk-do, and the cities of Daejeon and Ulsan. These measures ban the driving of old diesel vehicles over 2.5 tons from 6 a.m. all the way through till 9 p.m. Government employees will have to leave their cars at home if their license plate ends with an odd number. Also, people are urged to stay indoors and wear a face mask with a proper filter if you have to spend any kind of prolonged time outside.
Good morning. Unhealthy levels of ultrafine dust continue to hang over the Korean peninsula, choking many people, causing itchy eyes, sore throats, and even headaches. And the air quality is likely to remain very poor, with an ultrafine dust advisory being in place for many areas. But afternoon temperatures will be on the mild side, but chilly mornings continue, so beware of big temperature gaps between lows and highs of nearly 10 degrees Celsius, so dress accordingly and expect to see fine dust staying with us through the weekend. Afternoon rain is in the forecast for Jeju Island with a high of 10 degrees Celsius this afternoon, while the rest of southern regions will also see double-digit highs. Busan could see a high of 14 degrees this afternoon. And over in Hanoi, where the two leaders from North Korea and the U.S. will meet next week for the second summit, the city will have light showers today and tomorrow. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. Wherever in the world you are watching us, do have a wonderful weekend. Until next time, goodbye.